Hey guys, of course, is DBJ. Going to do this video is going to be about another narrative secret, but I'm actually going to put this out as a challenge too, and here's why. I was looking at Pathfinder book is actually sitting right behind my thing here, and looking at some other things and coming up with some ideas for some adventures and creature encounters and things like that. And it got me thinking about challenge ratings. If you guys are unsure what a challenge rating is, not necessarily for every game, but just picking up, say, this the Pathfinder Bestiary. If you take a look inside of it, there's a little spot. Let's see. Here's a wood golem, and if you take a look at the wood golem, there's this number over here, and there's a number, and it's a CR number, challenge rating. And it says challenge rating 6. And by using challenge ratings, it gives the game master a tool to create a balanced encounter. And I gotta say, it's like one of my tools. I really don't like challenge ratings. I think anything beyond using it as a generalization is useless. Especially if you're going to create a sandbox. So first, let me put out the challenge, and here's my challenge to the RPG community. Is it okay to create a sandbox world? You have north, south, east, west. You've got mountains, desert, rivers and oceans and swamps or whatever. Populate your sandbox with creatures and NPCs of all levels. First level, second level, third level, challenge rating 6, 7, 8, 10 hit dice, 12 hit dice, 20 hit dice. Populate the whole thing, and then insert your players into that world, irregardless of the challenges that they will come across. So let me give you an example. You've got villagers that live in a swamp. They're swamp people. They say that they're being encroached upon by, say, some goblinoids. The players find out that the goblinoids are being forced out of their home by a dragon. So the players, instead of going step 1, 2, 3, swamp, let's say desert home of the goblinoids, and then there's a mountainous region where there's like a blue dragon. Instead of the players going step 1, 2, 3 to quote-unquote gain the levels they need to fight the blue dragon, the second level characters decide to surpass all that, go to the mountain to fight the blue dragon on their own. Is that a legitimate way to have your players encounter something that will far surpass and completely annihilate them, but is it okay as a game master to do that? And I will give you my opinion about that. I say yes. If you're creating, and this is how I do it, I like to populate my sandbox with whatever creatures are out there that I choose. In a couple of my examples, I used the orc henchman with the Medusa and her ogre bodyguard with a displacer beast as a pet. If I feel like that encounter makes for a cool story, because let's say in my story the Medusa was a beautiful princess and she was cursed. I don't care what level the characters are, I'm going to include that into the game, and then allow enough space and allow enough growth and leeway, throw in enough foreshadowing, i.e. bang them over the head with the clue stick. You let the players know that if they are going to be in deep over their heads, let's say they're between like first and third level, that might be an encounter they're not going to survive. Especially if they have no knowledge what Medusas are, if they're going to role play that out. And even if they do, chances are that they're going to be highly overpowered. On the other hand, you go the opposite direction where the player characters are powerful, they're 10th to 15th level. And I still incorporate that into the game. I still want to use my Medusa and the Ogre, this Placer Beast. Maybe I'm thinking, well, you know, these player characters are probably going to overpower this group pretty quickly. But I tend not to want to change my story elements simply for the sake of some challenge rating. And I feel that those players, because I have a video about playing, you know, bring back the magic, like play first level, that there are times when players should learn how to run, how to retreat, how to, hey, this is something that is too tough for us. We need to discover, we need to gain information, we need to find out how tough this opponent is, we need to get the experience, the equipment, to create the tactics to fight this creature. Fighting it head on is just stupid. And I understand there's lots of players that want to be like, hey, I'm the paladin, all I do is detect evil and cleave, or whatever, what the hell, you know, I detect evil and smite, or something like that. And there's a reason why, you know, the smart paladins live longer than, you know, the first through third level ones that's all they do is, well, I'm just going to run into a fight, you know. Okay. Learning the skills of survival, and it doesn't always mean, you know, hightailing it out there because you're getting your ass kicked, is a necessary trait in this mystical medieval world that we call Dungeons and Dragons. And for those players who want to play characters that don't have those talents, I think it's a disservice to the game. So my personal opinion is, if you start your game out with, they go to the swamp, that's going to be my first to third level game. They leave the swamp to go into the desert, and that's like a 4th through 6th level. And then they go into the mountain to fight the blue dragon, and that's going to be like 7th through 10th level when they're finally tough enough to, you know, go up against the dragon. Yeah, it makes sense to have a linear scope, but if you have a sandbox, you know, maybe your players circle around those things. It could be that they're not picking up your clues as a game master, and that happens a hell of a lot. You know, because in our minds, we're like, well, I understand the story. And the players are going, well, if the main bad guy is a blue dragon living in a mountain, and all this stuff can be solved by just going straight to the mountain, why don't we just go to the mountain? It's a logical, you know, it's a logical choice. Now, of course, you can create the situation where the mountain is so far away, they have to go through 3 or 4 or 5 environments to get there. But it just made me think about, you know, the artificial restriction of only having characters encounter those things that are appropriate for their level. Another thing, too, that I think is a huge mistake is that players and game masters alike, I've heard on different posts and read on different blogs and things where they're like, well, these different creature encounters are unequal. And I have to take issue with that, right? Because it's like the person who complains that one character class is more powerful than another. And I made the analogy that, you know, in a dungeon, you know, the same level monk and wizard are going to be completely different. When the wizard throws his you know, fireball, you know, ray of frost, or, you know, lightning bolt down the hallway, and takes out a bunch of you know, nameless goblinoids, then the monk's going to feel like, well, darn, I'm useless. But it flipped the script, and they're fighting on, say, a pirate ship. You know, using that fireball on a pirate ship's not the smartest thing in the world, but the monk's probably going to kick ass because he can let his arms and legs fly all over the place, and the wizard's going like, okay, if I use my fireball, I'm going to burn the sails and probably burn the ship down. I use my lightning bolt, I'll probably destroy the mast. If I use my ray of frost, it's just going to cover the deck with a sheet of ice, and that's not smart. I don't know what to do. And the monk is sitting there like, you know, backflipping off the mast and swinging around on ropes and you know, those kind of things. So I think it's all about situation. The same thing goes with player characters against creature environments. It's all about the situation. And I feel that not every situation should be cut and dry and equal to the encounter. Another thing I think is a problem is, and I think people are doing the math wrong, if you create a completely equal scenario. Let's say you have 5 fifth level characters, and you add it up. You're doing math or something. You're like 5 characters. Okay, 5 times 5 is 25. So if I add these different creatures together, it'll be a challenge rating of 25. That should be easy. Technically, that's not easy, because the outcome of that is there's a 50-50 chance that one side or the other will die, or that literally 1/2 of the party members and 1/2 of your creatures will be dead in that encounter. That's not easy. That's a 50-50 chance of living or dying. That's actually rough. So if you have 5th level characters, your challenge ratings should be 1, 2, 3. They shouldn't be 5. 5 is like your middle of the story or middle to late story, where there's a good chance that out of the 5 party members, 2 are going to be dead and one's going to be mortally wounded or incapacitated. So I think people are handling challenge rating wrong. But anyway, I feel like story is more important than the numbers. Yes, I'll look in a book and go, okay, what's a challenge rating for a Medusa? What's a challenge rating for 10 or 15 goblinoids? What's a challenge rating for an ogre or a displacer beast? And I kind of look at it generally, and that's as far as I go. I don't bother adding things together or numbers, because I feel like the story makes more sense. And it's not always the fact that creatures need to. It's not a video game. Creatures do not need to. Player characters open up door. I am going to attack player characters. 3rd level characters against a pit fiend. That pit fiend is going to ignore the hell out of them. First of all, the pit fiend's not going to get hurt by him at all. Second of all, he's probably going to think it's a joke or they're useless. He'll probably take one and use him as an example. Maybe rip his entrails out and throw him over the face of the other ones. Sure. Pit fiend's going to do that. After that, he's just like, I'm bored. Like, go away. Let me summon up some of my followers, and from the pits of hell, you're not worth my effort. I will have my slaves kill you off. I gotta go, because I've got nations to corrupt. Not every creature even needs to get into a fight. You can have a Lich Queen and her entourage, and the Lich Queen looks at the player characters, and they're just like, they're 5th through 7th level, and they're like, oh, we're going to take on the Lich. And the Lich is just like, spell, deflect. I'm out. I'm going to destroy my castle and leave. I'm surprised you even found me, but I'm on to bigger and better, things of power. Maybe one day you will be powerful enough to challenge me, but for now, be gone with you. All creatures don't even have to fight. And a lot of those, you start talking challenge rating 16 plus, your mere mortals are like just ants. They'll either crush them under their foot or just walk past them. What the hell? I don't need to, it's the whole idea of having a Tarrasque fight characters, and it's like, dude, if you're not like 15th level or something, a Tarrasque is probably just going to ignore you. It was going to gobble up a couple of streets and some, go to the bazaar, maybe eat about 30 or 40 street vendors. Hopefully it'll disappear into the ocean like Godzilla or something. You're praying. Player characters, unless they do something to them, you're just going to ignore them. So, it's also about motivations. In my example about using the Medusa, and she's a cursed princess or something, if the player characters don't interrupt her plans, maybe she wants to capture the prince who, fell in love with the princess, doesn't realize that she's now a Medusa. She just ran off and was cursed or something. And she's just like, I'm going to grab the prince and live happily ever after. Unless the players actually have some, some backbone or some balls, I don't really have to worry about them anymore. I've got this ogre with his pet displacer beast or something. He's minute he shows up, he scares everybody away. I mean, those villagers with their pitchforks have been doing this for years, so it's not a big deal. I don't need to get my hands dirty. So there are times when I think that the organic nature of a sandbox story far surpasses and exceeds challenge ratings. So anyway, again, ending this with the challenge to the group out there. You know, is it okay to make a sandbox with radically different challenge ratings for creatures and NPCs? You know, making NPCs 3rd level, 8th level, 12th level, and just throwing them into your world, and then letting your player characters just encounter them as need be. Of course, throwing some breadcrumbs down, letting them know that they will be encountering something powerful, but allowing your players to encounter them. And if they get their asses handed to them, you know, is it their fault, or is it more reasonable to create a sandbox where, as the players travel through your world, the challenges grow in equal relationship to their experience levels? I just want to hear some opinions out there. I'd love some people to do some video responses. I normally don't ask for video responses, but I love to hear either side of the story. I'm on the side of, as far as a sandbox, not a linear story, but a sandbox, that populate your sandbox and let things fall as they may, and then just use realistic, meaning realistic within the setting, motivations to control the interactions with the players, and not using an artificial control, in my opinion, of challenge ratings and hit dice and experience levels. So anyway, DBJ, as always, I always sign off, create, don't destroy. So just, you know, create some really cool story ideas out there, and I'm glad people are enjoying my narrative secrets. This isn't really a secret so much, but I'll throw it in there as well. So anyway, you guys, have a good one.